This manga is a banger factory. That's right, I'm talking about the guy she was interested in wasn't a guy at all. Oh, well wait, that's my other channel. Welcome to Giggity with Casper, where we giggity all night long. Alright. Today we're gonna be talking about the most giggity of mangas. That's right, it's Sakamoto Days. Oh wait, wrong channel. Right, sorry about that. If you're used to manga heroes being edgy teens with spiky hair, tragic backstories, and abs so sharp they could cut diamonds, Sakamoto Days is here to shake things up. And by shake things up, I mean dropkick that trope into oblivion. Meet Taro Sakamoto, a retired hitman who looks like he'd be more comfortable at a barbecue than in a battle. Dad bod? Check. Apron? Check. Ability to destroy an entire criminal syndicate with a paperclip? Double check. Sakamoto Days is what happens when a legendary assassin swaps covert missions for stocking shelves at a convenience store. But don't let the suburban setting fool you. This manga is anything but ordinary. It's a wild mix of action, comedy, and heartwarming family moments. And it'll have you hooked faster than Sakamoto can neutralize a thug with a bag of frozen dumplings. So welcome back, my fellow comic book friends, and let's kick it. Let's start with the man himself. Sakamoto is the ultimate embodiment of actions speak louder than words. He doesn't need flashy speeches or brooding monologues. His calm demeanor does all the talking. Picture this, a hulking brute charges at him, full of rage and bad decisions, and Sakamoto just stands there. The next thing you know, the brute is on the floor. Sakamoto's still holding his shopping list, and you're left wondering how he managed to pull that off without moving more than an inch, or a couple of centimeters for my metric fellows, which is pretty much the whole world. What makes Sakamoto such a standout character is the way he combines deadly skill with everyday charm. He's the kind of guy who could single-handedly fend off a gang of assassins and still make it home in time to pick his kid's lunch. And he doesn't do it with flashy moves or over-the-top bravado. No, Sakamoto fights with the kind of casual efficiency that screams, "I've been doing this long enough to know it doesn't need to be hard." Giggity. This guy's an idiot. The action in Sakamoto Days isn't just about beating bad guys, it's about how the bad guys get beaten. Think Jackie Chan style creativity where everything around you becomes a weapon. Need to stop a getaway? Sakamoto might commandeer a shopping cart. Facing a dozen armed opponents, he'll take them down with items from the discount aisle. It's like someone took all the action cliches, blended them with slapstick comedy, and added a sprinkle of genius. The best part, Sakamoto doesn't even look like he's trying. While other characters are flippant, dodging, and screaming attack names like they're auditioning for an anime, Sakamoto calmly adjusts his apron and casually dismantles their plans with whatever is on hand. He's the epitome of work smarter, not harder. And it's both hilarious and awe-inspiring to watch. Sakamoto Days is much a comedy as it is an action manga. The humor comes from its sheer absurdity, like watching Sakamoto thwart an assassination attempt while making tea, or seeing his enemies panic as they realize they've underestimated the unassuming guy in sweatpants. Even the dialogue is sharp, with side characters throwing in witty one-liners and villains who are just a little too extra for their own good. And then there's Sakamoto's unflappable demeanor. No matter how chaotic things get, he remains calm, composed, and occasionally munching on snacks. It's the kind of humor that sneaks up on you. One second you're marveling at the action, wow, and the next you're laughing out loud because Sakamoto just beat someone with a chopstick without even spilling his ramen. At the heart of all the action and comedy is a surprisingly sweet story about family and redemption. Sakamoto didn't retire because he couldn't cut it anymore. He retired because he wanted a better life for himself and his loved ones. And while trouble keeps pulling him back into the assassin world, his unwavering dedication to his family is what keeps him grounded. The blend of wholesome and hardcore is what makes Sakamoto Days so special. It's a manga that can make you laugh, gasp, and feel all warm and fuzzy on the inside, all in the span of a single chapter. No great story thrives on its protagonist alone, and Sakamoto Days boasts a supporting cast as colorful as a 90s anime opening sequence. First up, there's Shin, Sakamoto's trusty sidekick and a clairvoyant ex-hitman. Think of him as a slightly frazzled apprentice trying to keep up with his impossibly cool mentor. Shin can read minds, which you'd assume gives him a huge advantage in fights. But when your boss is Sakamoto, a human wrecking ball who uses lunchboxes as projectiles, mind reading only gets you so far. The dynamic between Sakamoto and Shin is comedy gold. Shin is the voice of reason, or at least he tries to be, while Sakamoto dives headfirst into absurd scenarios with his signature zen-like calm. Imagine trying to scold your dad for overdoing it at the barbecue, only to realize he just saved the neighborhood from a group of ninjas. That's their vibe, and it works beautifully. The rest of the crew? Let's just say they're a buffet of oddballs, each with their own brand of chaos. Some are reluctant allies with mysterious pasts, while others are straight-up wildcards who leave you wondering if they're a friend or a foe, or both, depending on the weather. Every character, no matter how minor, feels distinct and brimming with personality, adding layers of unpredictability to an already zany narrative. The villains in Sakamoto Days are like an assortment of novelty mugs, weird, over the top, and unexpectedly entertaining. These aren't your standard brooding bad guys who spend half their time monologuing in the rain. No, these are the kinds of antagonists who might challenge Sakamoto with a flamethrower made from an old vacuum cleaner. What makes them shine is how they balance menace with absurdity. One moment, they're pulling off a plan so diabolical you're convinced Sakamoto might actually break a sweat. The next, they're cracking jokes or panicking because they realize they picked a fight with the wrong guy. The mix of humor and danger keeps every encounter fresh and fun, and you'll find yourself weirdly attached to some of these oddball adversaries, even as they're being systematically taken down by a hero with, say, a bag of chips. One of the most delightful aspects of Sakamoto Days is its setting. Most of the action takes place in everyday environments. A convenience store, a suburban street, maybe a mall on a busy weekend. It's like watching James Bond battle his enemies in the parking lot of a Walmart. The contrast between the mundane and the extraordinary is part of the manga's charm. The world itself feels familiar, but the characters and scenarios are so outlandish that it turns the ordinary into something magical. You'll find yourself grinning at the sheer absurdity of watching a fight scene break out near the snack aisle, with Sakamoto effortlessly using everyday objects to gain the upper hand. And let's not forget the convenience store itself, which somehow manages to stay open and functional despite the chaos that regularly unfolds there. It's almost a character in its own right, a symbol of Sakamoto's determination to live a peaceful, family-oriented life, and even as his past is trying to pull him back into the assassin world. Visually, Sakamoto is a feast for the eyes. Yuto Suzuki has a knack for balancing dynamic action sequences with hilarious visual gags, often in the same panel. The fight scenes are fluid and imaginative, making excellent use of the environment. One moment, Sakamoto is dodging a hail of bullets. The next, he's flipping a table like it's part of an Olympic event. But the real magic lies in the quieter moments. Sakamoto's expressions, subtle but effective, perfectly capture his unflappable nature. Whether he's calmly eating ramen while chaos erupts around him, or staring blankly as an opponent delivers a dramatic speech, his deadpan reactions are comedy gold. Even the character designs are a joy. From Sakamoto's understated dad aesthetic to the villain's wildly impractical outfits feels thoughtfully crafted. You can tell a lot about a character just by looking at them, which is especially handy when they're too busy fighting to introduce themselves. Underneath all the absurdity and action, Sakamoto Days has a surprisingly heartfelt story. At its core, it's about a man who's trying to leave his violent past behind and protect the peaceful life he's built with his family. It's a testament to how well the manga balances tones. You'll laugh at Sakamoto's antics one moment and feel genuinely touched by his devotion to his loved ones in the next. The narrative doesn't rely on complicated twists or overly dramatic revelations. Instead, it thrives on the strength of its characters and the charm of its scenarios. Each chapter feels like a self-contained adventure, but there's always a sense of forward momentum, whether it's through the introduction of new characters, escalating conflicts, or glimpses into Sakamoto's past. By now, You know Sakamoto doesn't fight like your average action hero. Forget flashy special moves or giant explosions. This is a guy who can turn a bag of flour into a weapon of mass confusion. What's brilliant about Sakamoto Days is how it continues to escalate the action without losing its inventive charm. Take an ordinary situation like restocking a shelf or dealing with a customer complaint and imagine it spiraling into a full-blown brawl. Sakamoto never seeks out trouble, but when it comes knocking, and it always does, he handles it with a level of creativity that would put MacGyver to shame. Okay, I know that's an old reference, but it used to be a TV show back in the 80s and the 90s, where a guy would make a rocket out of a grain of sand. There, now you get the reference. I'm old, okay? Now back to Sakamoto. The fights feel less like battles and more like puzzles, where every item in the environment becomes a potential solution. And don't get me started on how effortlessly Sakamoto adapts to every scenario. Fighting on a moving train? No problem. Concerned in a cramped office? He's got it covered. His ability to turn the odds in his favor, all while maintaining that calm, dad energy aura, is endlessly entertaining. You'll find yourself eagerly flipping the pages just to see what ridiculous object he weaponizes next. A hot dog might make an appearance. One of the most impressive feats about Sakamoto Days is how it balances over-the-top humor with genuinely tense moments. Sure, you'll laugh out loud at a villain slipping on a rogue banana peel during a showdown, but there are also moments when you're genuinely on the edge of your seat, wondering how Sakamoto will get out of a jam. It's a testament to Yuto Suzuki's storytelling that the stakes always feel real, even when the situations are ridiculous. The villains aren't just there to be punchlines, they're legitimate threats with skills, quirks, and motivations that make them memorable. Some are even sympathetic, which adds depth to the story and keeps it from feeling like a series of random comedy skits. The humor never undercuts the tension, instead it enhances it. There's something uniquely satisfying about watching Sakamoto diffuse a life or death situation with a deadpan expression and a perfectly timed gag. It's like the manga equivalent of a comedy action movie done right. Think Rush Hour, but with fewer body cops and more shopping carts. Beneath all the hijinks and hilarious beatdowns lies the heart of Sakamoto Days: family. Sakamoto's journey isn't about revenge or glory. It's about protecting the life he's built with his wife and daughter, and that simple, relatable motivation is what makes him such a compelling character. This isn't a guy who fights because he loves it, though let's be honest, he's really good at it. He fights because he has to, because trouble keeps finding him, and because he refuses to let anything threaten his peaceful life. It's a refreshing change from the usual manga trope of protagonists seeking power or vengeance. Sakamoto just wants to grill some meat and peace. But if you mess with his family or his store, he'll show you why he was once the most feared assassin in the world. What's particularly touching is how Sakamoto's love for his family is woven into the action. His wife and daughter don't just exist as background characters. They're integral to his journey, and their presence adds warmth and weight to the story. You'll find yourself rooting for Sakamoto, not just because he's a badass, but because he's a genuinely good guy, trying to do right by his loved ones. Now, Sakamoto isn't the only scene stealer in this manga. The side characters are a chaotic, lovable bunch who bring their own flavor to the mix. Shin, as I mentioned before, Sakamoto's mind-reading protege, continues to shine as the perfect foil to his boss's stoic demeanor. His attempts to be the voice of reason often results in hilarious misunderstandings, especially when he realizes that Sakamoto's plans are, less conventional. Watching Shin try to keep up with Sakamoto's nonchalant genius is like watching someone try to assemble IKEA furniture without instructions. It's chaotic, it's funny, and somehow it always works out in the end. And plus, you always have the spare parts. Am I right? There's always spare parts when you finish building IKEA furniture. I can't be the only one. Other characters, whether they're friends, foes, or somewhere in between, are just as memorable. Each one feels like they're stepped out of their own manga, with quirks and personalities so distinct that they leave a lasting impression. Some are pure comic relief, while others bring surprising depth to the story, showing that even in a world as wacky as this, there's room for complexity. The world of Sakamoto Days strikes a perfect balance between the everyday and the extraordinary. It's a place where assassins and ordinary citizens coexist, often hilariously clashing in the most mundane settings. The rules of this world are never explicitly spelled out, but that's part of the charm. Things just happen, and you're along for the ride. The settings are incredibly varied, from quiet suburban streets to bustling cityscapes, and each one feels alive with possibilities. The contrast between these everyday locations and the absurd absurd action unfolding with them only adds to the humor and excitement. What makes the world even more engaging is the way it reflects Sakamoto's duality. On the surface, it's peaceful and ordinary, just like the life he's trying to lead. But lurking underneath is a chaotic, dangerous underworld that refuses to let him go. This tension between the two sides of Sakamoto's life keeps the story compelling and unpredictable. You might think Sakamoto Days is all fun and games, right? And by now you know it's a lot of fun. But there's also genuine character growth that sneaks up on you like a stealth ninja armed with emotional depth. Sakamoto, for all his stoic, unflappable dad energy, is more than just a punchline or a powerhouse. Over time, you see glimpses of his internal struggles, his past as a feared assassin, and how it contrasts with his current peaceful life. The moments where Sakamoto reflects on his choices are subtle yet impactful, like when he looks at his daughter and realizes she'll never have to know the person he used to be. It's like someone threw a heartfelt family drama into a blender with a Jackie Chan movie, and the result is surprisingly delicious. Shin too gets his fair share of development. At first, he's this classic sidekick, eager but overwhelmed, trying desperately to keep up with Sakamoto's calm brilliance. But as the story progresses, you start to see him grow into his own, a capable fighter and strategist in his own right. Sure, he still gets smacked around occasionally. Okay, frequently. But he's learning, adapting, and adding his own flair to the team dynamic. Plus, his snarky commentary is the perfect counterpart to Sakamoto's silent coolness. Let's talk about the action again, because frankly, it is the lifeblood of this manga. You might wonder how a series that leans so heavily on creative combat can keep things from feeling repetitive. The answer? Utter, relentless creativity. Sakamoto Days doesn't just recycle the same fights over and over again. Each new conflict feels like a sandbox of absurd possibilities. One moment, Sakamoto is using a household item like a frying pan and extension cords to defeat enemies. The next, he's orchestrating an elaborate takedown involving a conveyor belt and a strategically placed rubber chicken. It's like watching Home Alone on steroids. With Sakamoto as Kevin McAllister, if Kevin grew up, put on a few pounds, and could bench press a minivan. The fights also have this delightful unpredictability. You never know if Sakamoto will disarm a villain with sheer brute force, outsmart them with mind-boggling strategy, or just casually ignore their attacks while finishing a snack. It's a constant game of, how is he going to win this time? And the answer is always surprising, satisfying, and sometimes hilariously dumbfounding. If you ever thought, why can't action sequences make me laugh until I cry? Then Sakamoto Days has you covered. The humor isn't just sprinkled on top, it's baked into every layer of the story. There's something inherently funny about a retired assassin with a dad bod being more deadly than a dozen gym rats with katanas. Sakamoto doesn't need to puff out his chest or yell dramatic catchphrases. His opponents do that, and he just blinks at them like they're the ones embarrassing themselves. They are. The deadpan comedy is masterfully executed, and it's not just Sakamoto who brings in the laughs. The entire cast gets in on the action. Shin's exasperated reactions to Sakamoto's nonchalant brilliance are priceless. Villains with overly complicated schemes get hilariously thwarted by the sheer absurdity of Sakamoto's tactics. Even the most intense situations often end with a gag so unexpected that you'll have to reread the panel to make sure you didn't hallucinate it. Sakamoto Days is the kind of manga that defies easy categorization. It's an action series with a heart, a comedy with depth, and a slice-of-life story that just happens to involve countless assassins. Whether you're here for the creative fights, the lovable characters, or the absurd humor, there's something in it for everyone. It's not just a story about an ex-hitman trying to live a normal life. It's a celebration of how extraordinary the ordinary can be. Sakamoto doesn't need six-pack abs or a tragic backstory to be a hero. He's a regular guy. Okay, a ridiculously skilled guy who just wants to protect what matters most, and in doing so, he shows that sometimes the most quietest heroes are the loudest in impact. If you made it this far and Sakamoto Days is not on your must-read list yet, then what are you doing? This is a series that takes everything great about action manga, mixed with a top-tier comedy, and adds a healthy dose of wholesome family vibes. It's the perfect blend of ridiculous and relatable, and it will leave you grinning from start to finish. As always, a big thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Let me know in the comments below, have you read Sakamoto Days? Or maybe you've read something similar? Let me know, and I'll catch you soon. Take care.